Hello.
Good morning, Afolaké.
Good morning, Anan.
I'm yawning a lot, probably from tired, fatigue, or hunger. So I hope you don't have anything to touch on food today.
No, I have quite a number of things that I'm interested in.
So what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about the myth on Africa. News around the continent that has to do with Africa is inclined towards a negative. You often hear about wars, diseases, and poverty as regard the continent. How many times do we hear about emerging middle class or beautiful locations about the black continent? Today, we're going to debunk 6 myths about traveling in Africa. Now, there are misconceptions and myths which do not really reflect Africa. And the first one has to do with the fact that Africa is a country. Now, 54 independent countries constitute the African continent. Africa is often spoken about as a single place or country. Africa is, in fact, the second largest continent on the planet after Asia. And cities like Johannesburg, Cairo, Nairobi are sprawling, busy cities with and homes to millions of people. And they have modern buildings and incredible, impeccable public transport and other conceivable modern facilities. Now, this 54 independent countries that constitute the African continent have their own constitutions and governments, and they are not being ruled by a chief. Now, they... Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Et c'est pareil pour ce qui est des langues et des dialectes. Il y en a plein.
It's also true about the languages and dialects.
Not left out here. As you can see on the tweets we have here, we've seen errors in journals, like the one we have here saying that there have been reported sightings in Australia, Ireland, Africa, New Zealand. How can you miss out on the whole continent? Come on. So now, the second I have here has to do with the fact that Africa is dangerous and full of crime. Now, if you look at news headlines, many people are often remembered by headlines like carjacking in, let's say, Johannesburg, robbery in Nairobi, or piracy off the coast of Somalia. And the perception is even made worse by government, traveling warnings by government, which sometimes could be irresponsible and overly cautious. Now, take, for example, there could be some bombing in Adamawa in Nigeria. It doesn't mean it has the same effect in countries, or in Abidjan in Ivory Coast. I mean, these are 2 different countries with about an hour difference in the time zone. You know, so that's there.
Je ne sais pas si vous vous souvenez de ce titre qui avait fait la une sur CNN l'année dernière, en juin.
Headline that made the headline about Kenya in CNN.
My different words are really powerful. I always we have violence in the United States.
Yes.
We're not saying we don't have violence in Africa, but when Africans are violent or there's violence, we're called savages.
Yes, that's viral. And then the third I have actually here is the fact that everyone speaks of one language in Africa. Well, there are several countries in Africa, and it's been home to several European settlements. The Dutch, for example, came to South Africa. The French went to Senegal and other West African and Central African countries. The Portuguese went to Namibia, and so on. And African nations have several people of Chinese, Indian, Malaysian origins. Therefore, it's really not uncommon to see people with different colors, speaking different languages and different dialects. Africa is permanently hot. Yes, indeed, the Sahara Desert is located in Africa, and it constitutes 1/3 of the landmass. The facts lead a lot of people thinking that Africa is just a sultry, a vast land of emptiness. I mean, the truth, however, is that deserts are not necessarily always hot. And Africa is not entirely a desert. Locations in the southern part of Africa have below freezing temperatures during winters, and asking it wouldn't be right to ask for the average temperature of Africa. It's like asking for the average temperature of, let's say, North America and half of South America combined together.
C'est absurd. It's absurd.
Yeah. It's absolutely absurd.
True.
And I have right here, the fifth I have is the fact that you could get sick in Africa. Yes, with the recent Ebola crisis, it's made the world scared that, we could catch the virus, not realizing that the continent is so enormous and countries could be so far away from each other that you were talking about distances like New York and Beijing. So, I mean, look at the Zika virus. It didn't stop people from going to South or North America. One just have to take precautions. And the virus was actually just affected by just 3 countries, and Nigeria was able to curtail that virus. Now, Africa lacks innovation. the idea that the continent lacks innovation is, and it's behind the word. The truth of the matter is that some African countries lack access to education and resources, but most of them, they make the most of what they have. Take, for example, in Nigeria, the first unmanned aerial vehicle, commonly referred to as a drone, was created by the Nigeria Air Force School of Engineers, and it can fly as high as 3 feet and can go as long as 4 hours. The M-Pesa mobile money in Kenya has been imitated by several it's been imitated by several European countries. And then the M-Pedigree, founder of Ghanaian innovator Bright Simpson, which is a global leader in the use of mobile technologies to combat, counterfeit on drugs and cosmetics and now fabrics. The truth is that some African countries have fewer access to opportunities, and so it's really difficult to keep up with the pace with the rest of the world. The fact that, however, doesn't mean that Africans avoid technology and are lacking behind in the world.
Well, that's and the father of anthropology in the world, one of the most respected white men in anthropology, Richard Leakey, who discovered the first human being, rather the first signs of a human being, is
Kenyan.
He's Kenyan.
Oh, top up. There you go. I mean, we have members, NASA, people in NASA who are African.
Exactly.
Obviously. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Merci beaucoup, Afolake.
Thank you very much, Afolake. See you next